Hello, BookTube. Who's up for a little mail? It's Monday morning, so let's do a little mail, see if it picks up our spirits. We have a lot of cardboard here. No actual boxes, but only one manila envelope. All the rest are cardboard. I don't know what that means. Could betoken a large number of finished copies. Let's see what this first one is. Well, this first one is a finished copy of something. Okay. All right, good. This is due real soon, I'm sure. Yes, August 20th. And I was kind of waiting for a finished copy. I don't know why. I was just kind of waiting, and now I have one, so I will get right on this. So this jumps right to the front of the list. We might have seen this already before. This is the finished copy of Ryan Swanson's The Strenuous Life. Theodore Roosevelt in the Making of the American Athlete. I don't know if I've told you about this book before. Let's see. It's not a big thing. It's from Diversion Books. As a child, Theodore Roosevelt was plagued by crippling asthma. Give up exercise completely, he was told later by a doctor while attending Harvard, or you might die of a heart attack. But Roosevelt pressed on. In fact, he boxed at Harvard. Roosevelt developed a lifelong obsession with athletics that he carried with him to the highest office in the land. As President of the United States, he boxed, practiced jiu-jitsu, played tennis on the court that abutted the Oval Office, conducted harrowing point-to-point walks, and invited athletes to the White House constantly. And those... Yeah, let's just get this out of the way there. That phrase, point-to-point walk, might seem a little strange, but it was done in parks near the White House, and that, what was the word? Harrowing is absolutely true. Guests of his used to dread these things because they involved scrambling in your walking clothes over rocks, sometimes precipitous rocks. They involved wading, sometimes up to your hips, in ice-cold water through streams and rivers. And they happened at a breakneck pace that was, as one visitor often complained, so fast that the only consolation you could possibly take from such a thing, which would be conversation, was impossible. They were just designed... well, another guest speculated that they were designed to break the president's guests. That was never the case. This person didn't have malicious bone in his body, but nevertheless, they were quite the trek. And a source of many, many a premature gray hair for the Treasury officials who were charged with the president's physical safety. Just a nightmare, but he loved it, and he came back invigorated. Never came back tired, even when he was older. Never came back tired. Not surprisingly, Roosevelt's personal quest had broad reverberations. During his administration, America saw an unprecedented rise in sports and recreational activities. With Roosevelt in office, baseball's first ever World Series took place, interscholastic sports began, and schools began to place a legitimate emphasis on physical education. Additionally, the NCAA formed, and the United States hosted the Olympic Games for the first time. And that was the aspect of this book that sort of intrigues me. There have been many I was a poor asthmatic, studies of Roosevelt growing into someone full of vigor. But the broader social implications there, the broader social portrait is what intrigues me about this thing. And I don't actually know. This comes out, the date is August 20th. I don't know if that's strict. I don't actually know why I've been waiting on this. I almost never miss books on the early 20th century progressives, on Harding, or on McKinley, on Roosevelt, or on Taft. I try never to miss any book on the subject, especially Roosevelt, since he makes such interesting reading. I do miss some. I miss the ones that are, the stupid political tracks or business motivational tracks. I tend to give those a miss. But I don't know. I don't have a good excuse for you, BookTube. I don't have a good excuse for why I have not yet read this. We'll have to get right to it. So it's at the front of the list now. So we've got a number of, we've got 7 or 8 books here. The Strenuous Life is now at the head of the list. So let's see how many times it gets bumped. Let's see how many other things we add to that list. Let's see. Let's see what this next one is. Okay, this is not a finished copy, so this will not be bumping anything. Let's see what this is. From Farrar, Straus and Giroux. Okay, all right, this comes out probably in the new year. No, late November. This is by Sarah Abrevia Stein, and it is Family Papers. A Sephardic Journey Through the 20th Century. I would improve the lighting situation here, but the pillow attacked me, so it clearly doesn't want to be up there. You just have to make do with dim lighting. It's not like you wouldn't be the first time. So our author is a historian and a confessed obsessive document hunter. With the Levi family papers, she has found the ultimate treasure trove. Spread across 9 countries and 3 continents, the Levi family papers tell the story of one Sephardi family's journey which spooled out to become a Jewish, Ottoman, European, Mediterranean, and diasporic journey. Through them, Stein is also able to trace the global history of the Sephardi Jews in the 20th century, a history that includes wars, genocide and the Holocaust, migration, collapse of old regimes, and the rise of new nations. That's a very big book to cover all of that. Fantastic. Okay, well, the author is the Sadie and Ludwig Kahn director of the Alan D. Leve Center for Jewish Studies, as well as professor of history and the Maurice Amado Chair in Sephardic Studies at UCLA. Good Lord, that is quite the mouthful. She's the author or editor of 9 other books, and the recipient of the Sammy Rohr Prize for Jewish Literature, 3 National Endowments for the Humanities Fellowships, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and lives with her family in Santa Monica. Okay. All right, so I am properly overawed by those credentials. So late November. All right, so that does not bump Theodore Roosevelt at the front of the list. That's something I will get to in the course of time. So let's move on. Let's move on to this next one and see how many of these we can fit in this original envelope so they're not scattered all over the place. What is this? Okay. Looks like a paperback original. Is this paper? Yes, it is. Paperback original. Comes out in a couple of weeks. This is Jonathan Vaughters, and this is a one-way ticket. And it's subtitled 9 Lives on 2 Wheels. A lot of you are going to know who this person is in a way that I don't. Let's see, is that any better if I hold it up like that? Jonathan Vaughters is one of the leading figures in the world of cycling. A Tour de France stage winner, a record-breaking climber, and the manager of one of the most successful teams in the World Tour. From his early years as an undersized junior racer in Colorado to his unflinching rite of passage as a professional rider in the infamous U.S. Postal Team, to his elevation as one of cycling's most resilient, ethical, and intelligent team bosses, the highs and lows of this person's career have mirrored those of the sport itself. What does that mean? We all know what the lows of the sport itself are. Is those mirrored in this person's life story? The lows of the sport are its greatest figurehead and a huge swath of its leading athletes being caught doping their own blood, being caught cheating, enhancing their physical abilities in order to do this job, in order to do this sport and rake in huge amounts of endorsements. So did this person do that? If he was the leader of a team and a staple of the Tour de France, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, that he's a drug abuser. Let's see. This memoir takes readers inside the mind of the athlete competing in some of the most difficult challenges in the world, and how a desire for a fairer playing field paradoxically led many cyclists toward performance-enhancing drugs. Vaughters started what is now the U.S.-based EF Education First pro cycling team, a team absolutely dedicated to clean riding, which has grown into one of the most competitive teams in cycling and started a movement that has swept all across the sport. Okay, so not only has he not done it, but he's dedicated his professional life against it. That's interesting. And this book, where I'm told in the sell sheet that the book deals with what led the author and so many athletes to begin doping. Oh, so the author. Okay, so he had a front row seat for most of the major events in cycling over the past 3 decades, and he shares his unique experience as he looks back on a career and examines a world he has both loved and loathed. But one of the selling points here is that he will describe what led him and so many athletes to begin doping. So he did. So that is the rock bottom that was talked about. He did cheat and then thought better of it and dedicated himself to the opposite. The book also deals with how pro cycling can actually be cleaned up. He tells of forgiving some of his peers for their own transgressions, and his team ultimately offered confessed dopers a second chance, himself included. Okay. All right. Well, great. So this comes out as a paperback in late August. I don't know. I don't know. Well, we'll see. I'm sure I'm not the only person in the world who followed the Lance Armstrong story and then just completely summarily wrote off professional cycling as just doping, as just drugs, with no honest people left in it. And maybe that was premature. So I will check and see. I don't know how you give a confessed doper a second chance on your team, except to rigorously test them every minute of every day. But I guess I'll find out. Okay. All right, interesting. Does not bump Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt is still in the lead. So let's see. Let's see what this next one is. We'll see if it fits in here. It's being very neat, very orderly. Oh my. Okay. Wow. All right. Okay, this is a big subject. This is another huge subject with a not large page count. This is from the folks at Princeton University Press. This comes out in late November, so it's not going to bump Teddy Roosevelt. This is by Philip Thayer, T-H-E-R, and it's called The Outsiders, Refugees in Europe Since 1492. Introducing a new major history of refugees and asylum seekers. It's a rich narrative filled with biographical sketches of well-known figures like Hannah Arendt and Madeleine Albright, as well as many lesser-known and some virtually unknown. In stretching the story back 500 years, the author gives modern readers a longer view when considering the plight of modern asylum seekers. The book chronicles every major refugee movement since 1492, with the Catholic rulers of Spain set in motion the first mass flight and expulsion in modern history. European history, that is. The author provides needed perspective on today's refugee crisis, demonstrating how Europe has taken in far greater numbers of refugees in earlier periods of its history, in wartime as well as peacetime. Huh. Okay. Well, this I'm not sure that lesson is germane, right? It's not the numbers. The attitude has changed. It's not that anyone's looking at the numbers and saying, "Good Lord, this is greater than the Albigensian Crusade." It's the attitude that has changed. Xenophobia has risen everywhere, but irrespective of numbers, the xenophobia doesn't care about numbers. But this is, I mean, the author is probably the expert, not me. Let's see. Do we know who Philip Thayer is when he's? Oh, this is translated. This is translated by Jeremiah Reamer. So what was this originally? Okay, this came out in Germany in 2017. And I am not told about the author, but okay, that's interesting. All right, that is interesting. To take a biographical approach like that, that is interesting. But it does not bump Teddy Roosevelt, so we're just going to press on. Maybe he will stay king of all he's erased. Let's see what this next one is. Let's see. All this cardboard, amazing. Here, let's just sliding these in here. It's very, very feng shui of me. They're all just fitting right in there. Let's see. Okay, this next one is a novel. It comes out in mid-November, so it loses to Teddy Roosevelt, absolutely. This is by Jorge Comensal. This is The Mutations. That is the cover. Which Steve approved. Let's see here. Okay, what an odd way to start a sell sheet. A few weeks before I was assigned to Jorge Comensal's The Mutations, I found out that my closest friend's father had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It came, as we tend to say, out of nowhere. This is the publicist writing this. There was nothing to blame, no obvious family genetics, no alcoholism, no outstanding cause for concern, and yet there it was, a tumor pressing its way into his stomach, metastasizing to his liver. And now here we are, dealing with the absurdity of it all. I should say that while this friend is brave and big-hearted and possesses many of the other qualities you'd hope to possess when dealing with a crisis situation, she is also the funniest person I've ever met. A few days after her dad's diagnosis, my friend texted me from her job as a hostess at a fancy restaurant in Chicago. Quote, "Just got to work after crying and heaving for 3 days straight, and my boss yelled at me for touching the flowers. When life can't get worse, it genuinely does. It's like when I was 12 and I broke both my arms falling off my bike and woke up from surgery with my first period. Okay. So this is what we've done. Every day, this is still the publicist talking about it. Every day I check in. I ask how she's holding up. Has she been eating? Has she been keeping her food down? How much water she's been drinking? Has she been keeping up with her daily routine? She sends me back photos of her smiling, tear-soaked mascara running down her face. I'm doing really well. How are you? We do not dwell on the impossibility of the obvious questions. We laugh through tears. We cry through laughter. We do this because there is absolutely nothing else we can do. About her friend's father's diagnosis. It almost sounds like her friend was diagnosed, but no, I learned that my closest friend's father had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I'm assuming he died in fairly short order. Most people do when they get pancreatic cancer. So maybe it's... All right, it's a little unclear. It's a little unclear. And it's 3 long paragraphs of autobiography of someone you don't know and that, isn't connected to the book. That's kind of odd. Let's see what the connection is. The Mutations, a novel about cancer, about suffering, about grief, about the ways in which sickness often renders us untethered from reality, about relinquishing control when you desire it most, about the ever-absurd question marks that is being alive, came to me when I needed it most. Okay, that was fairly smooth. Sure, there are obvious displays of hilarity that offered some belly laughs of relief. A parrot named Benito screams obscenities at the world because its owner, his tongue taken down by a tumor, can no longer unleash them. The mute man's teenage son tries to masturbate his own suffering away. Bedpans are thrown across hospital rooms. But underneath all of this is a foundation of the immense life that grief brings to the surface. A fundamental lifeline so often overlooked or tossed aside for easier, more appropriate rationalizations that we forget it's the thing that makes life worth living at all. This humor, this wonderment for life, this is the stuff that makes up the author's prose. This book takes us on a Flaubert-like journey into the colorful heart of Mexico City and into the minds of some truly neurotic characters. The result is a deeply beautiful testament to the work that humor can do in the face of suffering. Interesting. Okay. And the author was born in Mexico City in 1987, so he's a baby. he's a baby. So in 2007, he was 10, or 20. In 2007, he was 20. So he's the recipient of scholarships from the Fundación para de las Letras Mexicanas and the Fondo Nacional para la Cultura y las Artes, and has been published in such periodicals as Letras Libres, Este País, and Vice. And this is... Oh, okay, so not only is this his first English language translation, but this is also his first novel. Interesting. Okay, so it's a cancer novel. Boy, oh boy. Okay. It's the hardest thing in the world. You hear all the time in Reader's Digest and elsewhere, you hear all the time that humor has to be one of your foremost weapons in your arsenal of defeating cancer. But it's the hardest thing in the world to do anything when you're getting chemo, especially. But even before that, it's just, what's up with you, baby bean? Oh no, I don't have anything to toss around. I've got a very neat package. Nothing that affects a little schnauzer. Nothing at all. If I can get her close, I'll grab her and you can see her. All right, so let's keep going. The Mutation sounds very, very interesting, but it doesn't displace. I mean, the Theodore Roosevelt book is not only Theodore Roosevelt, but it's Right Away. So the only thing that was close is the cycling book. That's also Right Away. Let's see what this next one is. There's 2 more to go. Can either one of these unseat Theodore Roosevelt? Oh my. Okay, all right. This one comes awful close. Might do it. This might do it. This is from Basic Books. This comes out on August 20th. And this is by Leah Price, and it's called What We Talk About When We Talk About Books. Because my calls for a moratorium on riffing on that stupid Raymond Carver title have fallen on deaf ears. So what we talk about when we talk about running, what we talk about when we talk about sex, what we talk about when we talk about art, it was a dumb title to start with. It's a dumb collection of wretched, horrible, stillborn pieces of dude bro lit, and even now, how many, is it 170 years since what we talk about when we talk about love first appeared? And the number of books riffing on that title is endless, and here we have another one. What we talk about when we talk about books. Even so, I'm going to be forgiven because it's a book about books. With e-book sales leveling off, the dire predictions of the last decade about the end of print seem increasingly ludicrous. No, they don't. Learn how to read statistics. No, they don't. Learn how to read a breakdown. Or talk to somebody who does. But do the books that continue to get bought actually get read? Anyone who owns a smartphone will likely sympathize with the pundits who claim that technology threatens the attention span needed for cover-to-cover reading. An English professor and book historian, Leah Price, argues in What We Talk About when we talk about books, that anxieties about how we read today depend on the idea that there was a time when the average person spent long hours immersed in edifying literature. On the shelves of the world's libraries, Price discovered a more complicated story. There's a straw man in there. It's a small one, so I'll let it go. Edifying is the straw man there. The idea that there was a time when the average person spent long hours immersed in edifying literature is a straw man. Of course, that is not true. The idea that there was a time when the average person spent long hours immersed in literature is not a straw man. That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. We have ample documentary evidence that people once had greater sustained abilities of attention than they have today, certainly that they have in the age of the internet. Once again, I put the simple challenge to every single one of you. Turn your phone off and set it aside. See how long you can do it. See how long you can do it without checking any of those apps on your laptop. Leave the internet alone. See how long you can do it. My argument would be that you can't go more than an hour. And if you can't go more than an hour before you absolutely have to reach over and turn that phone back on and check Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and whatnot, then you are addicted. You are mentally addicted to that. It has wormed its way in past the barriers of your self-control, and you need to deal with it because that's bad. So that's a tiny straw man. Because there's no contesting the fact that people once paid attention in longer stretches than they do now, and that included books. Of course it did. But let's see what goes on here. As the author searched for traces of long-dead readers in the grease-stained pages of their novels, their lightly used reference books, and elegantly produced tomes with unbroken spines, Price found scant evidence that a golden age of reading ever really existed. Now, books for a long time, and starting again now in the present day, have been extremely expensive items. So it is no mystery if, what was that again? Elegantly produced tomes have unbroken spines. That is no mystery at all. They would have been handled with kid gloves. Most books would have been. The state of use is not an accurate indicator of the state of reading. Oh, no. Be careful there. From the 18th century dawn of mass literacy to the Cold War era triumph of the paperback, few books were read cover to cover. There is no way for you to know that. None whatsoever. Especially if you're going by the physical shape of the book. There is no way for you to know that. None. And what difference... Anyway, let's move on here. Today, we are shocked by data from Kindle showing that most readers start books but rarely finish them. But most of the readers whose traces Price encountered in old books were already fickle, skimming or skipping over tedious passages pulled away by life's demands. Okay. In fact, the author shows the debate about what kind of reading is good reading is hardly new. There was a time when clergymen and other authorities warned about books that could addict, distract, corrupt. Print-era doctors even forbade the same silent absorption now recommended as a cure for electronic addictions. Too much reading drove Don Quixote to distraction and Madame Bovary to suicide. Okay. All right. We now have a winner. Theodore Roosevelt has been displaced. I'm going to dive into this as soon as I turn off the camera. It was only toward the end of the 20th century that books came to be seen as an antidote to ubiquitous, always-on technology. In Britain today, the NHS book prescription program allows primary care physicians to recommend books to patients suffering from mild to moderate depression. Meanwhile, librarians, booksellers, and activists are using digital tools to reinvent books' age-old function of connecting their readers with one another. Okay, yes, they are, but there are plenty of librarians listening to me now, and I talk to plenty of librarians. 3 friends of mine are librarians, one in the South, one in the Northeast, and one at the Vatican. And they report the exact same thing, all 3 of them, which is that traffic and interest in actual physical printed books is at an all-time high. None of them can remember when there were more people using the library to read printed books. So this book is written with wit and deep insight and is an anti-nostalgic examination of the past, present, and future. Oh my, all right. Okay, so there's tons of advanced praise here. Maya Jasanoff, William Sherman, Jeffrey Nunberg, Jill Lepore, Neil Mukherjee. There are tons of advanced praise here for this book. And there's also a Q&A with the author, which I think I will save until I'm done with the book. Okay. All right. This is a book about books, but it's not the normal book about books. The normal book about books, much as I love them, the normal book about books is, aren't they great? There are bluebirds. Let's lose ourselves. Here are some cookies. Here are some snacks. Don't we all come together? And this has a thesis in mind. So that's even better. All right. Theodore Roosevelt has been dethroned. I'm going to read both of them. They're very, very short books, so it's not like I can't do both. But I'm going to read this one first, because it's all about me life. It's all about me life. So let's see. Let's see what this next one is. Baby Bean, your public wants to see you. Can I hold you up to show them to you? No? No. Okay. All right. This last one is also a finished copy. This is also an August book, probably August 20th. August 27th. Okay. Also has all these are coming with enormous bullet-pointed lists. Those are often added by publishers to sort of help reviewers, to encourage reviewers. And I guess that they serve that purpose. They always make me feel a little insulted. I don't know why that is. I shouldn't, because some reviewers really need them. I mean, they're a great help to clarifying the contents, especially of a long or abstruse nonfiction book. Not everybody has the time. But anyway, this is by Joseph Ledoux. I think we saw this already in advanced copy. This is The Deep History of Ourselves. The 4 billion year story of how we got conscious brains. The key to understanding essential aspects of human behavior lies in viewing our evolutionary history through the prism of the first living organisms. By tracking the evolutionary timeline, we discover that even the earliest single-cell life forms had to solve problems similar to those that we and our cells have to deal with today. Makes sense. Our cells don't know they're part of a multicellular organism. And the author is a renowned neurosurgeon, and in this book he examines the most unique thing about us, our brains. Brains enable us to think, to feel joy, sorrow, to communicate through speech, to reflect on the moments in our lives, to anticipate, plan for, and worry about our imagined future. Although these abilities are, in his view, comparatively new, they have deep roots at the beginning of life. The author tells the story of the path that life took in evolving from bacteria to humans. I have the advanced copy of this up on the shelf, on the August shelf. I haven't got to it. Rather than asking whether human-like mental states are present in other organisms, The Deep History of Ourselves explores what aspects of other organisms, even ancient ones, contribute to our behavior and our minds. Incredible. The author takes us on a step-by-step journey from the beginning of life and reveals how, with the incremental addition of new features over a long course of evolutionary history, nervous systems and then brains evolved, and how behavior changed as a result. While we differ enormously from our single-cell microbial ancestors, deep down traces of them and every one of... Okay. All right. We're going to back up about 500 words. While we differ enormously from our single-cell microbial ancestors, deep down traces of them and every one of our other ancestors survive in us and contribute to our behavior. Okay. All right, that sentence has broken my spirit, so I'm not going to read the rest of this thing. So let's see. The rest is just the after the sentence departs from the English language, it becomes just the author's publicity tour, and he is coming to Massachusetts. He's coming to the Brookline Booksmith, an independent bookstore in Brookline, Massachusetts. It's really quite good. They have lots of events. They have a really great remainder section on the first floor. And if you go downstairs, they have a great used section. I wonder if that's the fates telling me that I ought to pay the Brookline Booksmith another visit. Not to see the author, mind you. I don't fraternize with authors. I'm very envious in a way. I love looking at the BookTube channels where there are some booktubers, there are a handful of booktubers who make a point of going to see authors, standing in line with their book, and having it signed and having a few words with the author, or maybe even more than a few words if the attendance is sparse. And I always look on that. I gaze on that sort of enviously because I don't do that. I don't do that at all. I do know a lot of authors, and I'm perfectly happy to email with them. But I have to get the sense first that they understand the relationship here, and most of them do. And I'm sure that most of them I meet in person would too. But that would make it so much harder if I met an author in person and smooshed with them and liked them. What if they then wrote a bad book, and I wanted to review it and rip it to shreds? How could I do that? I don't know. Anyway, that is our mail. That was a fine mail haul. And Theodore Roosevelt did get deposed. Not by the deep history of ourselves, although that's on my list as well. This needs to be read right away. So a history of how we can get in touch with our inner amoeba. Then what we talk about when we talk about books, which I'm going to read first. Then The Mutations, a cancer novel, a debut novel from a young author in Mexico City. One Way Ticket by Jonathan Vaughters, story of biking and redemption. Apparently, he also hit rock bottom and doped his own blood and risked his own life in order to excel at this sport, while I'm sure telling journalists and interviewers that he was all natural, and decided to turn that all around and make it a crusade. That's fascinating. Then Family Papers, in which a historian studies a family trove of letters and other documents to trace one family's history through the tangled mess of 20th century Europe. And then, sort of tangentially connected to that, The Outsiders, refugees in Europe since 1492, when Ferdinand and Isabella expelled the Jews. And lastly, The Strenuous Life, Theodore Roosevelt inspiring the whole country to get out and play ball, and which was our leader. That was the contender until a book about books came along. I am an absolute sucker for books about books, so it was probably destined to win. But I'm going to wrap this up for now and see if I can fasten that pillow a little more securely, because I am in shadow here. You've got the beautiful tree and the birds singing in the background. I don't know if you like that, but it's making the books hard to see. I'll come up with something. I'd rather, of course, not have the pillow there when I'm filming. It looks kind of crappy, but we'll see what we can do. Anyway, that's your mail haul for today. Plenty of interesting stuff. Oh, another thing I wanted to ask you. I've been meaning to ask this for months, and I forget every time we do a mail haul. Do you want me to list these books? Do you find yourself pausing or going back or trying to find where I'm holding up one particular book so you can take a note for Amazon or Goodreads or whatever? Do you want me to list the books down below in these videos? Because I can try to remember to do that if you do. It might be more convenient. I know it's kind of late to ask after 1,000 book hauls, but still. So that's it. I'm going to wrap this up. That's our mail haul for today. Lots of interesting stuff and a book about books. So I am set. But I will be back. So I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.